The man known as the Golden State
Well, the man
Killer.
charged in the brutal Delphi murder.
A stunning turn for the Menendez brothers.
David Berkowitz, indicted for murder.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of LA Legal. I'm Liana, this is Neama, and we'll be talking about Gypsy-Rose Blanchard today. So this is actually a really interesting case because I think everybody has so many opinions on it. We have mental health, we have crazy grisly murder, we've got, Munchausen by proxy. I mean, it really is a Hollywood movie.
It is, and obviously we've been talking about Hollywood, but you touched upon it, right? You have the matricide killing your own mother, and obviously this is a big deal in any case, but now we're talking about Gypsy-Rose, we're talking about Eric and Lyle Menendez, people standing up to their abusers and killing them, right? And then obviously you have the whole abuse, right? Not your typical sexual abuse, but there's physical abuse, there's certainly emotional abuse, and then Munchausen syndrome just in general is really interesting. And now you have someone who's really putting it on her own daughter, Munchausen by proxy. So lots to talk about here.
I mean, lots to talk about because this little girl, right? She comes into this life thinking that she's got leukemia. She undergoes all these medical procedures, which, speaking of, how are the doctors performing these procedures, right? Before we get into the trial, one of the surgeries she had her stomach lining removed, attached to her colon or something. I don't know, color me ignorant, but don't you have to run a bunch of tests before you operate on your patient? And do they not catch that there's nothing wrong? What are your thoughts on the doctors actually performing these procedures?
Yeah, it's negligent to say the least. It was interesting. There was a case I was covering on Court TV where it was the opposite. The doctors there thought that the mom was suffering from Munchausen by proxy. They took the child away from the mom, thinking that there was nothing wrong with her, and that the mom was making it up. So really, on both sides,
wasn't that the ketamine treatments or something?
Yeah, she was getting ketamine treatment. Well, the mom was asking for ketamine treatment for her daughter because she was in pain, and the doctors thought it wasn't necessary. Then they call social workers. Yeah. The kid gets taken away. I mean, it was...
Let me loop this back. You think it was because of this case?
I don't know, because these are the only two cases that I've known that have received so much attention that we're dealing with Munchausen by proxy or lack thereof.
Right. Well, let's get into it. Okay, so who gets sentenced to what? We have Gypsy-Rose, the daughter. She pleads guilty, which I think was interesting. And then her boyfriend, who she met, I think, well, there's no Facebook back. I think it was MySpace. I don't know. She met him on some social media platform. They meet at a movie theater. They fall in love. And Gypsy convinces him to kill her mom so they can run off into the sunset and be together forever.
Yes.
And he actually goes to trial. He pleads not guilty. And so... let's get into it.
Yeah, so obviously as a prosecutor, right, you're wondering, why would someone plead not guilty? I mean, there's so much evidence, right? Oftentimes it comes down to the question of, did they receive a deal, some sort of offer, right? And the boyfriend comes and brutally stabs and kills the mom while Gypsy-Rose hides, earphones, covering her ears, whatever the case may be, so she doesn't even hear the sounds of these grisly murders. But she's a co-conspirator or a participant in the murder. She gets a deal, 10-year deal. She's eligible for parole after 8, and she's released. Where the boyfriend, I don't know if there was a deal, but it certainly wasn't a good one because he didn't have much of a defense. He pushes the case to trial. He's convicted. So now he's facing life without the possibility of parole. And a lot of people think, maybe he was,
Well, as a prosecutor, would you have offered her a deal or just taken her to trial, given what you know?
I would have given her some sort of deal for 2 reasons. One, she wasn't the one who was doing the stabbing. Even though the law says you're on the hook for the criminal acts and furtherance of the conspiracy law students, Pinkerton liability, or as an accessory, ultimately, I think the person who pulls the trigger or does the stabbing is the most culpable, number one. Two, it's not a legal justification. Again, we're going back to Menendez, right? If you're abused, you can't just murder your abuser. But it is somewhat of a moral justification. Again, I'm not saying that it's self-defense and people should kill their abusers, but obviously she was a victim of abuse. So I certainly would not want to put her away for life. Something less than that. 10 years, 15 years seems about right, given how much she suffered at the hands of her mother.
Okay. So I actually can get on board with that, right? Because we're not talking about, like serial killers, right? People who are a threat to society, right? These are, like you said, victims. It was not that it's okay, don't come at me, but it's like almost like in self-defense, right? You go to prison, you serve your time, hopefully you're rehabilitated. And honestly, we've kind of seen her, I'm jumping around a little bit. She's sort of got her life together now. She has a baby. And so does it make sense to put someone like that away for life? I would agree not.
Yeah, and obviously, look, this is something that people that are watching, I'm sure we're going to get comments on both sides because, again, I've seen it so much with Menez. There are people that think that Gypsy Rose is absolutely right in standing up to her mother and taking her life because Dee Dee took Gypsy's childhood away from her, right? And there's going to be folks that say, what do you mean? You killed your own mother. You just spend the rest of your life in prison. Because, again, I'm just comparing it to another case, Menendez.
Right.
Everyone is talking about it, right? Jose and Kitty. Jose sexually abused, and Kitty helped facilitate the abuse of Eric and Lyle. And there's people on both sides that say absolutely they had the right to kill their father, and other people think that they're murderers and they did it for the money. And even if you're abused, you can't kill someone.
Right.
So I think there's going to be folks who are watching right now that think that Gypsy Rose got off easy, especially because her boyfriend is going to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Right. And also because, like you said, drawing that parallel between her and the Menendez brothers, they're still in prison. Like, how long has it been?
35
35 years, right? And she didn't even serve the full 10 years. So I don't know. I think this is a very emotionally charged trial, and I think that's what you're always going to have folks on both sides.
Well, one thing I want to say, just in terms of the boyfriend, I mean, there are some people that think that he was manipulated, right? She had sex with him, before, and definitely after the murder, right? So, question is, again, not an excuse. I don't care if you're a young man. You can't let someone manipulate you into committing murder. But people are saying, well, maybe she has more responsibility in this. She really got off easy serving 8 years. She obviously met someone in prison, then met someone again,
Yeah.
So was she potentially manipulating the boyfriend and taking advantage of him to do the dirty work that she didn't want to do?
Well, I mean, I think that's very likely. I think the problem is that a lot of people saw her as somebody who's, not only physically ill, but also, she was never sent to school. She's uneducated. People think she's, like has the mental capacity of like a 5-6 year old. That's what her family later said. And so I think for the first time, I don't know if you watched the footage of her interrogation with the detectives. I was like, wow, she's smart, right? I mean, she's crying on cue. She's kind of leading them through this crazy story. And this is someone who's really thought it through, right? This isn't someone who's like 20 and has the mental capacity of a 5-year-old. I think for me, for the first time, I was like, okay, I'm on board with the manipulation story because she's very articulate. She knows exactly what she's doing. And then she like snaps out of it. She's like, okay, let me tell you the truth, which really is not the truth. It's another lie to pin it on the boyfriend. So
Yeah, look, and again, I do believe she was a victim. I'm not in any way going after her, but like part of our job is to really explore it from all sides. And there are people that are watching that said, hey, look, they raised a lot of money through this scam, and they think that she was an active and willing participant in all this kind of GoFundMe and all that. So
because she knew, she actually says this again in that jail recording, that she knew for a while that she could actually get up and walk. So she did participate in this, right? So she's in a wheelchair. Everybody else, all the neighbors think that she's got muscular dystrophy and she can't walk, whatever. But she actually can, and she knew this. And she tells the cops that.
And the other thing is, look, she's obviously sophisticated enough to go before the parole board, get out, have a reality show. She's reportedly worth millions of dollars. So this is someone who
What are we doing wrong?
yeah.
JK. All right. Well, let's go back to trial. Okay. Had she gone to trial, just really briefly, one last comment on this. Do you think her self-defense would have been a good enough defense?
So when it comes to self-defense, and each state's a little bit different, but it's essentially the same. To use deadly force, right, to kill someone, you have to be in imminent risk of death or serious bodily injury. That's it. So it's a really tough standard to meet. Obviously, if someone has a gun, a knife, or something, yeah, you can use deadly force to defend yourself. But if you're being abused over a long period of time, whether it's sexual abuse or physical abuse like this, it doesn't meet the legal standard. So it doesn't really fit within the four corners of self-defense law. Some states have what they call imperfect self-defense, if you remember from the bar, fun fun time. Imperfect self-defense is, okay, you have this belief. It's an unreasonable belief, but you have an unreasonable but sincere belief that someone's going to kill you. It reduces murder to manslaughter. So I think that's kind of where she ended up because of the abuse that she suffered. That's what I was saying, maybe around the 10 to 15 year mark, which is typical for manslaughter.
So we see more and more, especially with the Nicholas Cruzes of the world, a lot of this like mental health as like a self-defense, right? And so a lot of people are really quick to say, oh, that's just a cop-out, right? Everybody's mentally ill when it comes to committing these heinous acts. How do you feel about that? How do you think this impacts just public's perception, right? Because these are the folks who are on the jury, walking into these trials and having that kind of like prejudgment on the defendant.
Look, mental health is real, and everyone that's watched, they know I'm pro-prosecution, but like, it's not always black and white like that. So I think it's a factor in mitigation. It's not a defense. You should not get a walk. But Nicholas Cruz, I mean, the worst school shooter in American history, the horrific upbringing that he had and the abuse that he suffered. I'm not saying that he should ever be out of prison, but maybe, just maybe, that was a reason to save his life and for him not to get the death penalty, even though he was responsible for 17 murders. Again, I don't know what the right answer is, but I think it's something that juries and judges should consider. And I think the fact that Gypsy-Rose suffered this really terrible abuse at the hands of her mother, Dee Dee, it is a mitigating factor, and she should not be in prison for the rest of her life. Is it 8 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 15 years? There is some just sentence that is less than life or even 25 years.
I can't wait till we do an episode on the Menendez brothers, because this is literally what is happening right now.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about Nicholas a little bit. So the defense argument was that he was autistic and he was easily manipulated and he could not form the mental requirement for first-degree murder. How strong do you think was that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was talking about Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland school shooter. We're talking
No,
about...
we were. And his name is also
Yeah,
Nicholas. You were.
So I'm just saying, if folks are confused,
Yes.
different case, okay?
Back to Gypsy.
Listen, I do think that is... Look, I think it is a factor in mitigation. The problem is it's very hard to make a mitigation case when you're pushing the case to trial, because trial is about, did you do it or did you not do it, right?
he did.
Are you guilty or not guilty? And he did it. So if you're going to present an autism argument, which is something that I think a judge should consider, you really should be working out some sort of plea agreement and say, hey, here's what I would do if I were his lawyer. I'd say, listen, I'm going to accept responsibility. I'm going to plead. State, you ask for life. You can ask for whatever you want. I'm going to make my pitch to the judge that he should receive something less than life because of his autism, because of his mental health issues, because, you know, even though he was a participant, he really did so at the request of his girlfriend, who he thought he was defending. Almost like a imperfect self-defense of others argument.
And I think the most damning evidence against him was, right, because for first degree, you need premeditation, deliberation, right? Yay for all of you law students. But there's so many text messages that were presented to the jury about them talking like, okay, it's going down to, literally, it's going down tonight. It's happening tonight, right? And then he has to get to their house. And then they put together wigs and suitcases and, you know, different like identities, right? So think O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
And then there's surveillance footage of them going to the bus stop, purchasing tickets, right? So all of that to me is enough premeditation and deliberation, right?
It is. You got the duct tape, you got the knife, you know, they mailed the knife. I mean, they had an escape and a plan. So also going back to Menendez, that's why a lot of people have a problem, right? Menendez brothers, they go to San Diego, they buy the weapons, the rounds, they test the rounds, they're not the right ones, they go, you know, they reload. So it does show a lot of plotting and planning in both cases that really makes it seem like, hey, is this someone that should really get a break when this was something that was...
Right. And that's how I felt. Like, I felt like if I was on the jury and I saw all of those pieces of evidence and then the defense is claiming where he's got like 7 personalities, or like, you know, they kept pointing at him saying, you know, he's really disassociating, which is normal with, you know, people with autism. I don't know if I bought it. I don't know if I was able to reconcile that, because there was so much more evidence suggesting that he was very much involved and aware of what he was doing and ready to commit these acts.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is you're talking about not guilty by reason of insanity, which is very different than the mitigation that I've been talking about, right? Mitigation is like, listen, I did it, but for the reasons that we've mentioned, the mental health issues, this person deserves a lesser sentence. These are mitigating factors.
Right.
Not guilty by reason of insanity is something very different. It means at the time of the crime, because of your mental illness, you don't understand right from wrong, right? You're unable to form the criminal intent, the mens rea. And the reason that's important, not guilty by reason of insanity, means that you basically get a walk, right? So it's a very, very different type of defense, and it's an all or nothing, a really swing for the fences. So I agree. It's very tough to win that type of case.
So this was in 2016, I believe, or 2017. Do you think if that was today, given, again, the Nicholas Cruzes of the world and everything that we've seen so far, the outcome would have been a little bit different?
I don't necessarily think so. I mean, Nicholas Cruz, obviously, he pleaded guilty to all the murders and it went straight to the penalty phase. Again, I think potentially something less than life without the possibility of parole might have been an appropriate sentence. But it's oftentimes hard to get that type of sentence if you push the case to trial and you're asking the jurors to acquit you entirely, right? Because you were insane at the time. Oftentimes, it's called the trial tax. A judge isn't going to be very sympathetic.
And one last question. Do you think justice was served? I asked that because it's a really tough one. There's an emotional component to this. So do you think justice was served?
That's a tough question. I think with Gypsy-Rose, I do believe she was a victim of abuse. And she should absolutely get some sort of break, especially because she accepted responsibility and pleaded guilty. I think a sentence of 10 to 15 years would be appropriate for her role in all this. As far as Nicholas, it's a tougher question. I do think that because of his young age, because of the mental health and other issues that he has, I do think he should be eligible for parole at some point in his life. To put someone like that away for life without the possibility of parole, again, I'm not excusing the murder. I just think that that is someone that maybe can rehabilitate himself, not be a risk to society, and it's someone that potentially locking up him away forever without even giving him that possibility may have been an unjust result. But maybe it's something that he should have negotiated during his pretrial phase and not pushed his case to trial.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely.
There we go.
There we go. We've worked together too long now.
That's it. We're in sync.
Now we're in sync.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.